Magnum and Higgins previously posed as lifeguards on Magnum PI Season 5 Episode 2 to investigate a murder. After discovering a stolen military medal, Jin Jeong wins a storage unit sale and asks Rick and TC for assistance. The corpse of Captain Green was discovered on his boat in Episode 3. He had some wounds that gave the impression that his death had been an accident. These wounds even fooled Coroner. When Magnum spoke up against it, he wished to declare it to be an accident. Magnum didn't have specific responses, but he sensed that something else had occurred with his former CO, and the latter demanded information or he would issue threats. If the coroner was too quick to rule out foul play, he warned the coroner that he would engage the DOJ. Magnum intuitively understood there was more going on. Additionally, he didn't believe that Green's absence prior to passing had no bearing on how he passed away. He was Green's go-to person in an emergency. He was certain that Veteran Affairs was concerned about his former employer and that he had not been cashing in the pension checks. To find out if Magnum had seen Green, they approached him. He denied it, he said. He had requested TC to locate Green because he was working on a case at the time, but TC was unable to do so. Additionally, Green's home appeared deserted. Green was nowhere to be found. He was an orphan. He lacked any pals. He simply stood up and vanished. Now that he is gone, Magnum is confused. Magnum and TC made the decision to investigate Green's murder independently. They wondered if the fact that Green's watch had been set a day before he passed away might be a sign, and they reasoned that it might be a hint. Juliet was already assisting Rick, so they were unable to enlist her assistance. Rick has a friend called Kona who appeared to be having problems. He also wanted Juliet to go with him to see how he was doing. But Rick and Juliet encountered more difficulties than they anticipated. Kona was discovered shot to death inside his house. Juliet observed that Kona's blood was still pooling, which suggested he had only recently passed away, so they tried calling the police. She had just finished speaking when the gunman came to light. They had an advantage over Juliet and Rick. The two were taken as hostages. They drove them away from their cars and phones after loading them into the rear of a van. Juliet was unsure of their destination. She had a gut feeling that their kidnappers wanted them killed. To hide their actions, they might as well murder Rick and Juliet if they could kill Kona. Rick heard Juliet say that while they were being moved. They were finally led into the woods. When Juliet proposed her own idea, they were instructed to start excavating a grave large enough for three. Juliet deduced that Kona had lost something significant. Kona did acknowledge some of that to Rick, which is why he required assistance. He was also killed because it was anticipated that whatever was taken would be sold. Kona's friends were looking to market a special whiskey. Millions were spent on it. Kona was meant to keep it, but he never informed his friends of his whereabouts. They became aware of the situation. When they arrived at Kona's home to interrogate him, he pulled a gun on them. Before they discovered what had happened to the missing bottle of whiskey, they shot back and killed him. They hadn't found what they were searching for, Juliet realized. She also volunteered to assist them in finding the whiskey. They are private detectives, according to Juliet. They could assist them in finding this container, she claimed. They didn't trust Juliet or Rick because they were the only ones who knew Rick wasn't Magnum from looking through his phone. On the other hand, they did think they knew Magnum because, once more, they had their phones. They decided to use one of the phones to make a call to the real Magnum, warning him that if he didn't locate the whiskey bottle, they would murder his friends. Magnum decided to leave his probe into Green and join TC in their search for that bottle. They finally located it by looking through social media. A man was discovered posing with it. This ultimately brought them to the man who actually purchased it, and they then looked for the seller. By that point, they were out of time. Magnum only had a text conversation, but it was sufficient. Magnum encountered the abductors. The whiskey container was given to the recipient. Additionally, he claimed to know the man's phone number who had stolen it from Kona. In front of them, he made the announcement, and it turned out that one of the captors had turned on the other. Which makes sense considering how else would some thief have learned that Kona had a pricey whiskey bottle. In any case, the two men killed one another. It resolved their small conundrum. When they learned of the coroner's decision, the other survivors retained the whiskey for themselves and were enjoying it in celebration. Green did not pass away tragically. He was drowned by waterboarding. Thus, it qualifies as a homicide. In the meantime, Gordo accepted a private protection position with K-pop icon Ray Song. He did a great job of protecting her, which was his responsibility. Even worse, he discovered that a record company intended to kill her before she could leave or take back her masters. He actually saved her life by getting the police to apprehend those offenders.